City Talks with Ruben Abati.
Dr. Adamu is the Chief Executive of Beacon Consulting Limited, and he has contributed immensely to national discussions on security risk and intelligence management in Nigeria. If you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 0700-1051-1051. You can also leave a comment on our WhatsApp number 09099164403 and on our social media accounts at City1051 on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Kabiru Adamu. It's good to have you here on City Talks with Ruben Abati.
The pleasure is mine, Dr. Ruben. Good afternoon. I hope your weekend is going very well.
Wow. Trying to make the best out of it. But very quickly, let me ask you, before I go into the details, what's your take on the tragedy on the rail track? Explosive planted either on the tracks or inside one of the coaches, and then people dying, Nigerians going through so much havoc, and all of this happening just within 2 days after there was an attack on the Kaduna International Airport. And shortly after that, there have been reports of attacks in the Doko Zuma region, very close to Suleja and the Federal Capital Territory. And there have been other killings in Giwa local government in Kaduna State and elsewhere. What exactly is really happening? Some people have argued that this is perhaps connected to the politics of 2023. So what's your take? Is this sabotage or the general incapacity of the state to deal with the challenge of insecurity?
Thank you once again, Dr. Ruben. In simple terms, all of the developments that have happened over the last few days in Kaduna, an exemplification of the failure of the state to live up to that constitutional responsibility for the protection of its citizens. For an infrastructure as critical as the railway line to be targeted in the manner that it was targeted, and for us to be almost 5 days after the incident, not have the number of persons that were abducted or even an exact number of people that were killed. Yes, corpses have been recovered, and we're told by the state government that 8 corpses have been recovered, but there is no guarantee that those are the total number of persons that died. So all of this exemplification of the failure of the state to live up to that expectation, to provide law and order in its territory. That is a trajectory of something that we have been monitoring over a period where, in clear terms, non-state actors have been challenging the supremacy and the monopoly of the use of force by the state in a brazen manner, and not only challenging it, but successfully doing so, and in so doing, reducing the capacity of the state to function. Last year, my consultancy produced an analysis of fatalities for 2021, and it showed that about 8,700 Nigerians were killed, out of which about 80% of that were in the northern half of the country. So clearly showing that where these non-state actors are active, and in this instance, the Northwest and North Central states, they have successfully shown that capacity to exercise function. Now, tied to that is impunity, as well as the absence of accountability by especially state officials, appointed state officials, who consistently, despite this failure to live up to the expectations as constitutionally required, are not being held accountable. Of this number that I mentioned, about 8,700, I'm not aware, and you in the media, you probably have a better source than I am, that one single government official was held accountable for that the number of deaths that occurred in 2021. Likewise, this particular incident that we're talking about, if you recall, this is the second time there has been a bombing on that particular rail line. The first time was in October 2021, and then this recent one last on Monday, earlier this week. Now, in that first instance, I'm not aware that anyone was held accountable. I'm not aware that any investigation was conducted, and that those who were responsible to have allowed that incident to occur were held accountable for it. Likewise, this one happened on Monday. I'm not aware, please correct me if I'm wrong, that a government investigation has been launched and that the processes that should allow for that type of accountability are being conducted at the moment. I'm not aware. So this, I think, in a nutshell, is an exemplification of where we are, the failure and the weakness of the state institutions to live up to the responsibilities that they are constitutionally mandated to perform.
Well, but in terms of response, the president immediately issued a statement. He summoned a meeting of the security service chiefs, and he gave them marching orders to make sure that an investigation was carried out and everything will be done to secure, the area. He also directed the Nigerian Railway Corporation and the Ministry of Transportation to ensure that services were restored immediately. And after that, we've seen, the vice president visiting the victims in the hospital. We have seen the governor of Kaduna State also visiting and also promising that the medical bills of the affected persons will be picked up by the state. And the governor of Kaduna State has since then also said, look, he will have a meeting with the president. This was when he visited Giwa local government. One, that a military formation should be established, a command center for the military should be established in the northwest. Two, that train services should be restricted to the last train moving from Abuja to Kaduna at 4 p.m. Three, that the security agencies should go ahead and bomb the locations of the terrorists, because those locations are known to the state authorities. Again, the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amici, has visited, and he said all he needs is just 3 billion naira that he's been asking for to provide sensors, surveillance, and monitoring systems. The Inspector General of Police has already deployed drones, according to him, and security men to protect people who are repairing the rail lines. Okay, but you say the state has been negligent. But look at this catalog of efforts that they seem to have tried to make within the last 72 or more hours.
In a nutshell, none of these efforts, frankly, are new. The presidential directive is not new. This is not the first time the president has issued such directive. We are told after the governor met the president yesterday, he issued a media statement where he categorically told the world that his government had sent a letter to the Railway Corporation advising the Railway Corporation to suspend movement at night. He also told us that he's of the belief that there was credible intelligence before the incident and that there was a failure to act on that intelligence. He also told us that that intelligence suggested that the perpetrators are not common criminals, they are terrorists. And he also told us that, in a nutshell, absolved responsibility by the state, that's Kaduna State, that as far as it's concerned, it should be the federal government. And to an extent, he's right, because as you're aware, security still remains in the exclusive list. So he does have a level of responsibility, but in terms of the direct responsibility for addressing this issue, it lies squarely with the federal government. And then with regards to the statements or the visit by the vice president and the several other ministers that visited, now those are good, but then is that what we need at the moment? In my honest opinion, especially for an economy that is going through the kind of doldrums that our economy is going through, if you quantify the resources that have been expended in those visits, it's very possible that that 3 billion naira that Amici is looking for would have been expended probably by now as a result of those visits. The entourage they go with, all the retinue and the services that they require when they visit goes to huge amounts. And what does that visit actually achieve? In my honest opinion, not much. What we require, and that's what the whole world usually does if there is an emergency of such magnitude, is to establish a center that would meet the needs of the victims. I haven't seen that done, Dr. Abati. I would have expected that immediately after the incident, by Tuesday morning, a center should have been established there in Kaduna, a center where all the government departments will have representation, where they will be collating effort to meet the needs of the families of the victims, the media, anyone, any stakeholder who has the requirement. That center will be meeting that need. And at the same time, that center will be collating intelligence. That center will be able to at least quantify the number of persons that were affected. That wasn't done. Rather, what we've seen is this haphazard response by different persons. And then to an extent, even an expression of frustration by a cabinet minister in the person of the Minister of Transportation, where he suggested that if a solution that he recommended was implemented, it would have prevented the incident. In my honest opinion, and for information that came after that statement by the minister, suggested that he himself did not follow certain procedures, especially the procurement procedures. Certain aspects of the Federal Executive Council meeting that held when he submitted that request came out in public and it's gone viral, where there are a lot of questions have arisen regarding the procurement process or the attempt to pass that requirement through the Federal Executive Council. So clearly showing that beyond the requirement to provide safety for such an important infrastructure, there were other considerations that may have led to that submission by the minister. So in a nutshell, I'm going back to my earlier statement. Responsibility, accountability, impunity, unfortunately have shown face, and no one is being held accountable. We've not been told, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that an investigation has been launched into that incident. In fact, in contrary to an investigation, I have seen footages on the media, including several national television stations, showing the violation of the integrity of the evidence in that train. I've seen footages showing where people have gone into that train and frankly have tampered with the evidence that if we have preserved, we would have used them in prosecuting whoever is behind. Eventually, I'm hoping that we will identify who is behind it. And it is when we harvest that evidence, we gather that and preserve it, that we will be able to use to prosecute that person. Currently, most of that evidence would have been destroyed at the moment because that train, that ground zero where that incident happened was not preserved. So again, all of these things, despite the effort by the several government officials that you mentioned, unfortunately have not met the basic requirement for an emergency preparedness policy or plan. We do have one, and as a journalist, I urge you to pick it up and see if we followed that emergency preparedness plan. We haven't followed it, and I think there is room for improvement. Now, let me be clear. Let it not seem as if I am bashing the current administration. This is something that unfortunately has been a part of us as a people. It's something that we've seen over time in subsequent administrations. It has happened in previous ones. It has happened unless we call a spade and draw a line where we say this has to stop. This is something that unfortunately will continue. Impunity is common within our public systems. Lack of accountability is also very common, especially in the security sector, where we do not have monitoring and evaluation measures that would hold the office holders accountable for their actions. It's something that unfortunately has been there and will continue unless we change the narrative.
Dr. Adamu, I asked you a question earlier on about whether this is politically motivated in the light of the fact that the country is moving towards a general election in 2023. Some people have said this is about politics. Some people have even accused the state of complicity. You refer to videos making the rounds. There's a particular video making the rounds in which some of the persons in the video were saying, look, we are Fulanis. We don't carry guns, right? We are cattle rearers. Cattle, do not produce guns. And that, look, we've been given these guns to do this. So all kinds of conspiracy theories out there. Is there any merit to all of these conspiracy theories?
So based on the evidences, let me state categorically here that I'm trying to support three families of victims in their abduction negotiation that is currently ongoing. So I know a little bit beyond what the ordinary person knows. There is enough evidence to suggest that the perpetrators have affiliation with Fulanis. Now, whether these are Nigerian Fulanis or other Fulanis, only when they are arrested and interrogated would we know their real identity. But beyond that, and this is where I differ with a lot of the media narrative, they are not doing this because they are Fulanis. They are doing this because they are criminals. So that identification with a particular ethnic group shouldn't be done and to the extent that we profile every Fulani as being criminal. No, every ethnic group has criminals among them. In this instance, yes, these are criminals, but they are not doing it to achieve, quote unquote, a Fulani agenda. There is no Fulani agenda. By the way, I'm Fulani. And if I'm not just Fulani, I am Fulani from a particular part that if there was an agenda, I would have known.
So are you saying, Dr. Adamu, that there are some people who are more Fulani than others? Is that what you're telling me?
No. The point I'm making is that because I am educated and frankly, because I run an intelligence firm, I would know these things. I do run an intelligence firm and I release, trend reports. I will urge everyone who is interested to go to my website and see those trend reports. Everything I'm discussing here, I've discussed it almost a year ago. They are not new to me. My point is that they are criminals, not because of their ethnic background or ethnic affiliation. They are criminals because of whatever motives they have decided to enter into. But beyond that, and to answer your question directly, there is definitely a politicization of security in Nigeria. The current administration wrote to power and won votes on the basis of security. And if anyone wants to belittle their successes and show that they've not achieved anything, then frankly, one of the best ways to do that is to show that they failed in the area of security. And I'm not absolving the administration of any responsibility. If they allow that person to succeed, then frankly, they are responsible for allowing that person to succeed. And that is exactly what is happening at the moment. Perhaps in the course of our conversation, we can expand this aspect of the conversation in terms of what the government can do to reduce this. But the political angle derives from several elements. Number one, the level of grievance in Kaduna is as such that it's so high, and that provides a cesspool from which anyone who wants to recruit any threat element can go and recruit. And there are, at the moment, 3 basic threat elements in Kaduna that are active. Number one are the bandits. We know they are active in Kaduna. They are stationed in ungoverned spaces that are existing in Kaduna. These are forested parts and mountainous areas that traverse almost the entire part of Kaduna. And that is why places like Birnin Gwari, you have an intensity of their attacks because there is a forest there. All they do is come out, block the roads, or attack communities near those ungoverned spaces. Number 2 are the criminal groups that we know are also active. And this is born out of several factors: the unemployment rate in Kaduna, the fact that poverty is also high in Kaduna, and then of course the last one are the terrorist groups. It is not a hidden fact that there are terrorist groups that are active in Kaduna. The Kaduna state government has released a report saying that there are terrorist groups active. One of the terrorist groups that we've been able to identify is the Ansarul Muslimin fi Bilad Sudan, otherwise called Ansaru. That group has active cells in Kaduna. And there is also suggestion, even though this needs to be confirmed, that the other 2 groups, that is the Jamaat al-Ahli al-Dawat wal-Jihad, otherwise called Boko Haram, and the Islamic State in West Africa province also have cells that are active in Kaduna. So all of this, plus other push factors, the fact that Kaduna holds a strategic location within the northern geopolitical zone, and the fact that if you want to reduce the capacity of the north, as it were, to function, Kaduna is one strategic location to attack, makes Kaduna like a beautiful bride for political strategists and intelligence strategists to concentrate on and focus on. Now, that is not in any way absolving the responsibility of the state to prevent this type of things from happening. So yes, there may be a political angle, but beyond that political angle, the security angle, I think, is even more important. We are going into the realm of, as it were, a little bit of speculation if we focus only on the political angle and not necessarily the security angle. The reality, like I've mentioned, is that there are 3 threat elements that are active in Kaduna. Addressing those threat elements will solve both the political challenge as well as the social and security challenge that is afflicting Kaduna.
Okay, is it possible for us to make an attempt to look at the cost of all of this? at the psychological level, at the level of transportation investment, and also in terms of the general atmosphere within the country. I mean, air travel is a problem. The airline operators are saying they have no access to fuel. The roads are not safe. Now the train network, the railway network that's supposed to provide another option, now we keep having problems. Whether it is a train breaking down due to lack of fuel between Lagos and Ibadan, or attack by terrorists on the way to Kaduna, and then to even move onto the roads is not safe. And yet, the government says it has provided more security for Nigerians than at any other time since 1999.
So to be fair to the government, and if we situate security in the context of physical security, that government statement may be correct. In terms of the armament and hardware that has been purchased across the various streams of security. Mind you, there are 27 ministries, departments, and agencies that are involved in security in the government, and almost all of them have benefited massively from this purchase of hardware and physical security. So to that extent, I think the government is correct. But where I think the government is, for lack of a better word, missing the point is that security has transformed, and to an extent, the government itself has admitted that security has transformed. We are no longer looking at state security. What the world looks at today is human security. And that is why in 2019, when the government launched its revised national security strategy, we were told that there is going to be a transition, as it were, from state-centric security to human-centric security. What we haven't seen is an implementation of that transformation. Security is still being looked at from the prism of state security. That is why when a minister is traveling, he has up to 20 or more security personnel moving with him, and you go to a whole local government headquarters, and probably they don't have up to that number of security personnel in the local government headquarters. So that I think is the challenge, that inability to translate the projection or the admission by the state that, look, we want to transform security from state-centric to human security, and the perception by even the players themselves that they still own security. No, security should be in the hands of individuals. So even if you are investing in armament, like they've invested, the Air Force now has platforms that, frankly, in the past 6-7 years, they never had before. The Army too has a retinue of assets. I'm sure you've followed that. This is a public forum. I don't want to speak in details, but suffice to say that they've acquired a reasonable number of physical armaments beyond what used to exist. What we have failed to see is the soft aspects of security, and earlier on I spoke about them. Number one, climate change, Dr. Abati. The relationship between climate change and the insecurity that we're seeing in Nigeria is a very close one. You can say it's a positive one. The more the consequence of climate change continues to happen, the more we'll see insecurity in the country. And I'm not aware that even the Ministry of Environment is talking about this. In fact, you are aware that the funds that should be used for climate change, frankly, have become, as it were, a slush fund by politicians. So that's one area we need to look at closely in terms of the consequence and effect of climate change and how it's impacting security. Number two is the weapons proliferation. I did a study about 2 years ago by my consultancy, and I can tell you authoritatively that the number of weaponry, small arms and light weapons that are in the hands of non-state actors, it's a ratio of almost 12-1 in terms of the ones that are in the hands of our state officials. Even if you add the individuals that are licensed to hold those weaponry. And so a country cannot survive like that, where non-state actors have more weapons, and that is why they can come daytime, go to a community and invade that community because they know they have more weapons than our state functions. Number three is the level of grievances that exist in virtually all communities within the country. This is well documented. There is no part of this country that you go to that there is no either real grievances or that the perception of that grievances, both at the national level and then at the subnational level. If you pick a state like Kaduna, you just need to go to southern Kaduna and then the grievance is palpable. If you go to Kogi State, if you go to somewhere like Okene, regarding the political space and their participation, the grievance is palpable. Go to Benue State, between the Domas and Thieves, that grievance is palpable. Now that is just political grievance. By the time you look at social, and by the time you also look at the economic one, where the poverty level in a state like my own is about 80-something%, that means for every 10 persons you pick, almost 8 of them are within the poverty gap. And so, and then with the projection by the World Bank recently that over 90 million persons would fall under the poverty line this year. So you can imagine how easy it would be for me if I want to create whatever, uproar in the country or a security challenge. I have a readily available pool that I can recruit from on the basis of all of these grievances that I've mentioned. So in a nutshell, yes, the government has invested massively in physical security, but I think they should have done more in these other soft areas that I mentioned. Yes, the response will be we've created the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, and we are also doing several social investment programs. But what is the effect of that? Like I said, I come from a state where the poverty level is 80%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics.
Which is that? Which state is that?
Sokoto State. Oh. Now, despite this massive investment in social investment programs, we haven't seen any change in terms of the poverty level in my state. Likewise, you go to several other parts of the country. So yes, they are doing all of that, but it takes me back to the earlier statement I mentioned, the absence of a commensurate M&E, monitoring and evaluation mechanism that will show in a transparent manner the effects of these government policies and programs, starting from the security sector that we're discussing, down to even soft security components like the social investment programs that the government is implementing.
Dr. Adamu, yes, you've made a number of recommendations on how, the government can respond more proactively. But let's interrogate some of the suggestions that have been made by some other stakeholders. The National Assembly in the House of Representatives. Some of the members, in fact, said that maybe the House of Representatives should shut down to force President Buhari to take a more proactive look at the security situation in the country. Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Alhassan Dogowa, went a step further to recommend that, in fact, every Nigerian should be allowed to carry arms, because it looks like what we're dealing with is the failure of government. So, in the face of that, everybody should just carry arms and defend themselves and their families. What do you say to that? Is that an option? Is the House of Representatives or the National Assembly shutting down, as Senator Smart Adeyemi recommended? Is that an option?
Dr. Ruben, with due apologies for what I'm going to say, and with a high sense of responsibility, I think our government officials, including members of the National Assembly, can do better. Let's start from the fact that they collect monies for aids. Most of them don't have aids that would support their parliamentary participation. So, as an example, when a parliament member is, for instance, that every Nigerian should carry weapon, what is he suggesting? That is, an invitation to anarchy, honestly. Or when another one suggests that they should go on strike because government is not performing its responsibilities, that is also a failure of recognition of their responsibilities. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. The parliament is an intrinsic part of our democratic system. They, as a part of the democratic system, have several instruments for checks and balances within that system. I'm not aware that they have even demonstrated, if I'm going to give on a percentage of, up to 100, that they've exercised up to 20% of that power. And I'll explain what I mean. Apart from legislation, and I can talk about legislation for a very long time. By that, I mean, have they taken time to look at the laws that set up all the 27 ministries, departments, and agencies in security? Almost all of them were created during the military era. Now, for the ones that were not created during the military era, they were probably created in the First or Second Republic. So now that we're in the Fourth Republic, have they taken time to look at those laws because of the powers they have under legislature to now determine whether their mandate is appropriate for the current times that we're in and commensurate with the democratic expectation? I don't think enough of that has been done, because there are several challenges that make those institutions not, concurrent with the democratic practices that we have. A good exemplification of that is the EndSARS protest that we saw. We know what led to the EndSARS protest. Now, the second point is in their oversight function. Every year, these ministries, departments, and agencies, 27 of them submit budgets to the National Assembly. The National Assembly members take their time, they go through these budgets and then pass these budgets. Now, do they follow up in terms of a detailed M&E function to confirm that those monies are actually used for the purposes for which they actually say that those monies are being used? Now, if they do that, believe me, we won't be in the situation where we are in at the moment. And then lastly, all these 27 ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, are controlled by the executive arm of government. Now, if what we're seeing is a tacit failure, then they have, as a last resort, the possibility of impeachment. Now, they've not done any of these three things that I've mentioned, and then they are now indicating all of these other measures. So I see all of that as a knee-jerk reaction, and perhaps also a failure of an understanding of their rules as parliamentarians. I heard a parliament member saying yesterday that because it's the military and other security agencies, the confidentiality clause will not allow them as parliamentarians to conduct oversight functions. No, our constitution allows them to do that. They need to enhance their capacity. They need to engage in more training. They need to recruit as aides security practitioners who really understand the security architecture so that they can support them. Now, without going into the details, I bet you as a journalist, all the chairmen of the committees on security, find out who their aides are. And, we can now answer that question, whether the aides have that capacity for legislative oversight. I'm speaking specifically about the chairman of committees now, not any other functions. And I have a reason for saying this. Beyond this, if we're going to move forward, then every arm of government will have to play its role. The legislature is a member of the government. It cannot absolve itself of responsibility of governance. Likewise, the judicial arm of government. Some of the recent rulings, that we've seen of recent, frankly, are adding to that grievance that I spoke of earlier on. And so it's not healthy if one arm of government points a finger at the other one. They're all responsible in this regard. And as Nigerians, I think we're going to hold them accountable. Yes, the executive arm of government probably has more responsibility, but it's not fair really to point a finger at the other one when you've not carried out your own responsibility.
Okay, I get your point very clearly, Dr. Adamu. We'll try to take a short break now. After that break, we'll invite people to make their comments and to ask our guest questions. Our guest is Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a security and risk intelligence specialist, and he's been talking about the Kaduna-Abuja train tragedy and also the general security situation in the country. If you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us on 07001051. You can also join us via WhatsApp on 09099164403 and on social media accounts at City1051 on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's take this short break and then we'll be right back. Dr. Kabiru Adamu is still here with us in the studio. We'll be right back.
City Talks with Ruben Abati.
City 1051 FM. And our guest is still Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a professional security and intelligence expert, specialist. And he's been talking about the security situation in the country, and particularly the Kaduna-Abuja train tragedy. Okay, looks like we already have a caller on the line.
Ruben.
Yes, please go ahead, sir. Your name, your location.
This is Moses from Isolom.
Moses from Isolom.
Lucid analysis, clear interpretation by Dr. Adamu. Am I surprised? No. You can always expect you're expecting to give precise analysis when it comes to security. I've had him on several platforms just today. But I have some issues. The question remains, is it not a perpetual issue of 6 columnists? I can't imagine despite the heavy spending by this government, yes, when they claim that they done more concerning security or otherwise in this country, they have their factions. But then, it is one thing for you to hold a very sharp cutlass. The question is, who is holding the sharp cutlass? Who is making use of that cutlass? Because if I don't have that which should get the job done, but if an incompetent person is holding it, or maybe even a saboteur is someone is holding it, then they are like the problem. Again, I consider it as ludicrous or utterly ridiculous. Some statements coming from the Harlow chambers. How would you suggest that, Nigerians should be harmed? I wonder when some of these guys talk. I think, you think dying or bearing arms is like going to a shop to pick up candy or to buy sweets from a shop. It goes beyond that. So bear arms and the training, the rigor involved, and the say that so electric so flippantly, and it's so ridiculous, honestly. Again, why is it Kaduna? Kano is a neighboring state. I don't think in 8 years I've had anything about Kano especially, because over time Sokoto, Zamfara, and some northwestern states have encountered some of this wickedness or evil that is being perpetrated everywhere. But the question is, why is Kano so secure? What are they doing right in Kano? I'm asking you, I'm asking Dr. Adamu, what are they doing right in Kano that is so isolated, it's so secure that other states, neighboring states, Kaduna especially, if Kaduna committed a special offense, people should wonder. And with respect to the bomb report of, I think, October 2021, was that really a bomb attack? Because NRO students, the railway corporation came out that it was a gas explosion. So let Dr. Kaduna maybe check his facts again, because he admitted that maybe there have been 2 bomb blasts concerning this railway stuff. The mind is that for that one, NRC came out and they refuted it, and they resumed service almost immediately, because it was a bomb blast. I don't think they would have resumed the way they resumed. So let me get that fact right. But my question again is, why is Kano?
Moses from Isolo, thank you. I think that Dr. Adamu already got your point. Dr. Adamu, because I see other persons on Zoom here who would like to contribute. But over to you. Why Kaduna and not Kano?
Yeah, the audio was not very clear, so if you could summarize the two questions.
Okay, two major points. He thinks that, yes, despite the fact that the government has invested a lot, this looks like a problem with fifth columnists, sabotage. And secondly, why Kaduna? Why is Kano so peaceful? And Kano is like a neighboring state. So what accounts for the difference in terms of the security situation?
Yes, with regard to the first question, when I said, impunity and accountability, honestly, that covers the first question. Security organizations are meant to have a vetting and its background check system in place, where before they employ, they check the background of those persons. It's called pre-employment background checks. And then even after they employ the person, they do periodic vetting depending on the strategic positions that are being held by those individuals. So in this instance, they are meant to be able to see red flags. There are several red flags. They are not doing this at the moment. And so that allows different individuals to, infiltrate into the security system, as well as our government structures. Our government structures that honestly have input from almost all the ministries and departments and agencies in government are also supposed to be doing this type of pre-employment and background check, but it's not being done adequately. And so that allows the level of impunity that to an extent we will call saboteurs or fifth columnists if we had the system in place. Let me just quickly, because this is a public forum, I'm being careful not to say too much, but as an example, the Department of State Services, SSS, is supposed to conduct this kind of checks on certain appointees. Now, you and I know that check is not being done meticulously and judiciously in the manner. In fact, if we have a lawyer listening now, he or she knows how difficult it is in this country to conduct a common criminal check, that in other countries, all you need to do is to put the person's name on a website, and if he has a criminal conviction, it will come up. In this country, it's almost impossible to conduct a criminal check. I think the only state government that is attempting to have a database of that is Lagos State at the moment. And even that is not yet comprehensive and it's not conclusive. So that is why the possibility of fifth coming is there, but it goes beyond that. I think I subsumed all of that under the impunity and lack of accountability, because there are things that are supposed to be done, and unfortunately, they are not being done. With regards to the second question on why Kaduna, I think I answered it during the course of our conversation. I listed several points of why Kaduna is, a very beautiful, bright, as it were, for, would-be terrorists, would anyone who has a strategic reason, either political or security, to create havoc in the north. Now, beyond that, the level of grievance that is in Kaduna is higher than in any other northern states. The Kano state government has done really well as a security practitioner. I know that. So let me give you an example. The forested part of Kano, the place called Falgori Forest, the governor donated that forest to the military, and the military were very quick in setting up a training camp there. So that makes it a little bit difficult for the bad guys to go and set up a camp there. Now, Kaduna, I'm not aware that there is any of those forests where the military has a camp there. The truth of it is that it is in those ungoverned spaces that these criminals hibernate and carry out their activities. And as a country, we are yet to come up with a solution to occupy those ungoverned spaces. Kaduna is a very good example of that. Neighboring Niger State is another example of that. As long as we allow those ungoverned spaces to remain in Kaduna, then this issue, unfortunately, will not end. We must end this phenomenon of ungoverned space in the country before we start talking of an end to this issue.
Okay, let's bring Mr. Amici Awara into the conversation. I see his hand up on Zoom. If the engineers can just bring Mr. Amici Awara onto the screen so that I can make his contribution. Mr. Awara, are you with us? I see your hand up. Please unmute Mr. Amici Awara. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me, Dr. Abati?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us. Where are you calling from?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, let me start by thanking Dr. Kabiru Adamu for all the insights into our security situation. I think he has said so much, so I'll start by agreeing with him that clearly government has failed. When I say government, I mean all arms of government, have failed. But I want to ask questions. From where we are today, Dr. Kabiru, why is the government so reluctant, to deal with insecurity? By that I mean, we have had, names, mentioned by countries outside Nigeria, United Arab Emirates, and the US recently, giving us names of those sponsoring, these non-state actors, as you said. Why is Nigerian government elected by the Nigerian people to protect us? Why are they turning their eyes the other way? Even when countries outside Nigeria are trying to help by providing information that will help Nigeria deal with insecurity. Because some of these people bombing the rail track and the cabins of the train are not really the right people to deal with. I'm not saying don't deal with them, but I mean, if you get the sponsors, it's like you are removing the oxygen from these bandits. The government is not doing anything. Now, you talked about grievances all over the country. Why is our government not ready to engage people who are aggrieved? Just like in a family, family unit. If your wife or children are not happy with you, there's no grandstanding. You sit down and discuss with them. Because you want a stable and united family. You want peace. Why is government not doing that? Why is government not looking at issues of multi-level policing? Because if you have people in the local government who understand their area, assisting in policing, assisting us at state level, all these levels will be tied into the federal level. We will not be where we are today. Why do we have people who are, mentally lazy to solve problems? Meanwhile, they're enjoying, from, Nigerian resources. You talked about, state-centered security. They have security. They have funds at their disposal. They watch Nigerians being murdered every day. I turned on my TV this morning. A lot of killings going on in the north. These are human beings. They come from families. So my question is, why do we have government that is lazy or unwilling to solve problems, even when they have been provided some solution? Well, they have arms and ammunition, but that's not the solution. It's part of the solution, but we don't see results. The Kaduna-Abuja train, if they had drones, monitoring, then with government, security forces, contact, available, so that when there's an infraction, you know who to call. You can tell them exactly where the location is, and they respond immediately. Maybe that will solve the problem, some of the problems we are seeing. So thank you very much for my question. Thank you.
Yes, let's have Dr. Adamo respond to those concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Inche, for highlighting this point. The answer to your question, frankly, goes beyond our conversation here. I think it's rooted in the transparency and the effectiveness of our political system. How effective is that political system? Our votes, do they count? The people that we elect, are they actually the ones that are eventually sworn in? Do they see us as being responsible to us? I keep on speaking about that impunity. And I think it reflects differently in different parts of the country. Depending on which arm of government you are, in certain parts of the country, you don't dare go back home if you've not been responsible and you've not shown your capacity as a representative to them. In other parts of the country, it doesn't matter. You can be a parliamentarian and spend 20, 30 years in the parliament, and they don't really care as long as you go and give them sometimes 20 or 50 naira. You don't have to show any infrastructure or any developmental project to show your participation there in politics. So I think that is the reason for the political impunity that we're seeing. But I mean, we have hope in the recently passed electoral law, the amendment. Perhaps as a result of that, we would see an improvement in our electoral process that would mean our votes would count. But we also have a responsibility. I did election monitoring in Lagos in 2019. And I can bet you I was visibly shocked. It's not the first election monitoring I did, but that was the first I did in Lagos. And I was shocked at the number of youths that I saw playing football on election day. In fact, most of the voting centers that we went to, they were elderly people that went to vote, not necessarily young people. So you see young people vibrant on social media platforms, on Twitter. They speak a lot about all of these things, but when it comes to election, a lot of them don't vote. So if we are going to change this, I think we need to become more active within the political space, get our voters card, and then go out to vote for the right candidate. Then perhaps we would have contributed. If we don't do that, then we're also negatively contributing to the process, allowing people like what we're discussing at the moment to hold power, and what is happening will continue to happen, unfortunately.
Okay, I see that we have some people who have been trying to reach us via phone call. Let's take this call. Yes. Please, your name, your location, and please keep it brief.
It is from Sango.
Go.
Dr. Abati, from Sango.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
I want to really appreciate Dr. Abati for all you have to go to. But he has really liked my game. But I want to ask, number one, the governor of Kaduna, he makes just to understand when the governor has spent about 21 billion naira for education. But where he has spent a lot.
Hello? Looks like we lost connection with that caller from Songo from Ogun State. Okay, we'll take another caller, but before then, here is a message from Emmanuel Igbine. He says, by virtue of relevant sections of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, the constitutional responsibility of ensuring the safety and security of Nigeria and any part thereof. Okay, I'm trying to get what he's saying. And any part thereof, where is that of the government, lies more, he says, lies more on the National Assembly than the President of Nigeria, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The National Assembly must immediately jettison partisan politics and put the interests of Nigerians above all. Majority of our elites in politics are not helping matters at all. Okay, what do you say to that, Dr. Adamu? I thought Section 14, the Constitution is quite clear about how security and the welfare of the people is the primary responsibility of government. And that does not, exclude any arm of government.
Exactly, and I think this is what, as Nigerians, we need to recognize. Yes, the executive arm of government, and in this instance, the president, does have, the bulk share of responsibility, but then every other arm of government also has that level of responsibility. And if we continue to interrogate them in the manner that we're interrogating the president and other members of the executive arm of government, then maybe we'll see a level of change. And in the long run, I believe that we need a constitutional change, especially the decentralization of security. Now, that does not mean state policing. There are two different things. All I'm saying is that the involvement of the state government in different levels in security. Lagos State has given us a very good model upon which we can pick, and that is this, the security trust fund that it has. If other states can emulate that, and then we have a constitutional recognition for that fund in a manner that the proceeds of that fund and every other aspect of its activity is recognized by the state, then I think we would see more. All other states should have similar arrangements. At the moment, and I know you know this, Dr. Abati, if you are a private entity and you engage the police, they will deploy to you and you pay money for that deployment. But where does that money go to? I doubt if it goes to the treasury or it goes to the police accounts. So these are the things that we need to change so that at the end of the day, we have a transparent system of running this security organizations. I think it would help in the kind of accountability standards that we're discussing at the moment, and it would reduce this overwhelming, concentration on the president as well. He's the commander-in-chief, but then every other arm of government has responsibility. And more importantly, like I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, there are 27 ministries, departments, and agencies. And if you pick just one out of them, like what we normally do, we pick just the military and forget. And the military are only 4. The others, the 23 others, are also very important. No matter how good the military are, if these other 23 are not doing their role, then the military's role will not be felt. And that's the situation we are at the moment. So in response to, I think, Emmanuel's question, yes, it's good to look at the role of either the parliament or the president, but we should look at it as a whole, where, even if one is effective and the others are not effective, then we will not see the kind of results we want. All of them have to work together to provide that Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and which is to ensure the welfare, the safety, and the security of every citizen and property of Nigerians.
Okay, very quickly, Emmanuel Igbine is not done yet. He says, under this type of politics we now play in Nigeria, I have no confidence that we'll overcome these terrorists. Okay, you can hold on to that while I quote from Austin, who joined us via WhatsApp. He says, good afternoon, Dr. Ruben. Looking at the high-level insecurity in the country, I weep for this country called Nigeria. For how long shall we continue like this? President Buhari's level of incompetence and cluelessness is unbelievable. Looking at the situation, this administration knows what to do, but wouldn't do it because some individuals benefit from the ugly situation. Indeed, Nigerians are very docile. Austin, what do you say to this too, quickly, so that I take just one more phone call and then we'll wrap this up?
The last contributor, some of the things he said may not exactly be correct. You reeled out the several things that this administration have done. And like I also noted, in terms of the physical armament security that is required, they've invested quite massively, probably better than any other administration. The missing link there has been the soft component to security. And I think it's something that we all need to continue to interrogate and to speak about. For those who seem to have lost faith in the polity, I don't think, personally, I don't have any other country. This is my only country I had, and I'm sure like you had the option to live abroad, but you chose to live here. So we'll continue to interrogate the issues. We'll continue to recommend to, especially the younger ones, go out and get your voter card and exercise that right that you have. Don't just, lament, like I see a lot of lamentation on Twitter and Instagram and other social media platforms. I participate actively in politics and vote. That way, you would change the outcome of this narrative, and we have hopefully competent leaders.
Well, what of the other point made by Emmanuel Igbine, that he doesn't think we can overcome these terrorists?
He's the one I was referring to when I said the lamentation. We can overcome that terrorist if we vote the right persons into offices and we continue to interrogate their actions. I talked about M&E. People like Emmanuel should encourage every person that they know they have their ears. I know, Dr. Abati, you have the ears of those in government. Encourage them to introduce M&E functions within governance so that they're able to monitor, in fact, metrics will change this narrative. I have a suggestion. And I know you have Mr. President's ears, Dr. Abati, advise Mr. President to issue a tasking order to the 27 ministries and departments and agencies to produce the names, identities, and profiles of these bandits. Let him give them a time frame of 1 month and let the coordinating elements within the security sector follow up that tasking order, so that at the end of that 1 month, we have the pictures, the profile, the identities, the locations of all of these gunmen that are killing Nigerians everywhere. And then once that is done at the end of that 1 month, he should issue another tasking order that they should be arrested, and where they resist arrest, then they should be killed. And that the time frame for this should be 2 months. Believe me, within 3 months, this thing will end. If any of these MDAs does not live up to that responsibility, then he or she should lose his job or position. And where it's shown that he's culpable, in other words, he exemplified negligence in that responsibility. If he's to be prosecuted, he or she should be. The moment we do this, within 3 months, believe me, all of this, if the IG of police knows that he's going to lose his seat, if he doesn't go and arrest Dogo, Gide, or Turji, you think you allow him to continue moving? You go and arrest him the moment he knows he's going to lose his job. So that's my recommendation. Let's do this in a very practical manner. This impunity that we're seeing should end. Anything short of this will mean this will continue. Next year you invite come and discuss it.
Well, we seem to have run out of time, but there's still one persistent caller on the line. Maybe that caller should just make his or her point, and then we'll close the program. Hello? Hello? Okay, we don't have that connection. On that note, I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, for taking time out to discuss this very important subject with us. We hope that the government is listening and that other stakeholders have also paid attention to some of the suggestions that you all have made on this program today. And I would also like to thank all the persons who called in and those who reach out to us via social media on Zoom, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Remember, the conversation does not end here. You can still reach out to me on my social media account at Abati1990 on Instagram, and also to the station at City 1051 on all social media platforms.
City Talks with Ruben Abati.